This is Bleav in Buckeyes. I'm Brian with All-American cornerback Chimdi Chekwa. We got some news for you guys here. Our coach Day has made some decisions. He has hired some guys, and essentially he really has promoted some guys, man. So, Chip, man, how you doing out there? How you feeling, man?
Feeling good, man. Just, continuing to follow the updates in terms of coaching hires. And it seems like one of our guys, right, when the guys we played with, Brian Hartline, was named offensive coordinator. What do you think about that move?
Man, I think it's huge, man. I think we spoke about it a little bit last show, and I said, I didn't know if it's something he wanted, right? I never kind of got to the point it's not something that he couldn't do, right? Just like, he's a coach, he got a family, coaches, stuff go awry, you got to up and move and things of that nature. And I was like, well, maybe, he had the position before. Like, maybe he don't want to do that. Maybe he just want to coach his wide receivers and kind of focus on that. But he was been interviewing for jobs. He said, hey, give me the opportunity. And Coach Dave rewarded him by naming him offensive coordinator. So I'm super proud, super happy that one of our guys that, we know well, one of our former teammates at Ohio State is now in control of the offense. And you imagine that things would stay the same, that the offensive coordinator will be actually in charge of the offense and calling plays on Saturdays when the season comes up, right?
Yeah. I think, at this point, Ryan Day finally gave up the play calling, went through a year of it. There's no turning back. There's no going back. And, Hartline, and I don't know Hartline as a coach. I don't know him in the locker room, calling plays, making those decisions, etc. But I know him as a player, and he's a guy that's going to have great attention to detail, great structure, just from knowing him as a player. So I have no concerns about his ability to take on, soak in everything that he's been able to soak in over the years, and then be able to have his own approach and do well in that way. But one of the things I think most about is just the overall ability of the group that exists on this team from an offensive standpoint compared to what we had in years prior. So you had Chip Kelly this past year, who obviously has a ton of experience when it comes to being an offensive coach and offensive coordinator, et cetera, with Ryan Diggs and all that. And then prior years, you have guys like Kevin Wilson and others. A ton of guys with a ton of experience being OC, being head coach. The thing that's a little bit unique this year is that, one, you got the Brian Hartline promotion, right? And you don't have that same type of, coach that has been around the game for a long time. You don't got an old guy in the room, right? You don't got an old guy in the room, which, there's some positives to having that wisdom. And there also could be some drawbacks, too. You put a guy like Brian Hartline in charge, you want him to be able to command the room. You want him to be in charge. And sometimes an older guy can step on that guy's toes. So there's some positives, I think, and some negatives to going with Hartline, and then, not hiring another, I guess, older, like longer time OC type player to be a part of that offensive staff.
Yeah, right. Because, the rest of the staff kind of lays out is that they hire Tyler Brown, who's as the offensive line coach. He's coming over from Virginia Tech. He was previously the offensive coordinator there and the quarterback coach, but it looked like he has some experience in the Big Ten. To formerly used to coach at Penn State, coached tight end somewhere. So, he has some experience as obviously running the offense as he obviously had to do at Virginia Tech. And then they also promote Keenan Bailey, who's our tight end coach, as the co-offensive coordinator up to that role. So essentially, he's still same job, right? He's still at the tight end room controlling things there, but now he has the role of being co-offensive coordinator. But yeah, I don't know, man. It'd be exciting to see because obviously, he's a wide receiver, and I know, like you said, Hartline from how he used to approach the game as a player. I remember him being a very hard worker, right? And that's probably why he works very well at the college level, and him being always a front runner when it comes to working out and things of that nature, going out there and putting it all. And I expect that to kind of, obviously he's been doing it, right? But now he kind of kicks up a little bit as picking up the actual play calling and scheming, right? Because as offensive coordinator, you scheme things, right? You kind of, you kind of show things, you do things, you kind of come back to it later on to the game. You're just not just picking plays out of a hat and to see which one kind of works out. It's an approach, it's a scheme to getting it done. So he would now step into that role. I imagine that he would do a fantastic job. Once again, he's been under a lot of gas, like you've been stating, and Coach Day being there to still kind of help him out a little bit, if need be, if it takes that a little bit, something like to kind of maybe pinpoint a game plan, or as all head coaches do, hey, give me your best run here, give me your best pass, still be able to kind of assist things like that, ends the game, or the headset will definitely be able to assist with things as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good point there, though. It's not like Ryan Day is gone, right?
Yeah,
like
right,
when you name offensive coordinator, yeah, he's gonna be the coordinator. He's gonna take charge. He's gonna be the guy calling the plays. But in the middle of a game, right? They're on the headset. Hartline could say, yeah, we want to run whatever, GT counter right or whatever. They could say, no, let's not do that. Let's
not run that to the boundary, right?
Right.
A little thing like that. Right.
Like, he's still there, okay? So, and he still has the opportunity to have his influence. And, I think there's something to, because the offense was on point through the playoffs. And they had that run, and what they did was great, right? And they still have that that nuclear weapon in Jeremiah Smith out there. And yeah, there's some positives to bringing in an experienced play caller, having that guy in there and taking charge of the offense. But there's also some positives to keeping some of what you had, right? Because Ryan Day Hartline has been with Day for all of these years. Right. At some point, if you've molded somebody into who you want them to become as your offensive coordinator, you don't want to lose them to somebody else. Right?
That's right.
You want to take it all to, everything they've learned and take it elsewhere. And your imprint is now gone, and you got to go bring in somebody else. So there's a benefit to keeping everything intact and continuing to build off of what you've already been able to accomplish and move forward into the future with a bright young mind and everybody, perspective in Brian Hartline.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point, right? You don't want to lose basically all that you've been working to. Just lose that out the door. Because obviously, Hartline's been taking some interviews, right? We know he took a couple of head coaching position interviews and things of that nature. And obviously, we was fortunate enough to retain him. But you don't want to lose that. And essentially, you get to a point where it's like, he just got to show it, right? Time for him to go out there, actually make those calls and move forward from there. I guess another aspect I wanted to kind of bring up with him being the offensive coordinator now is the quarterback, right? I think this is probably it's been a while since we had a true, no matter who's the quarterback going to be, it's going to be a young guy, right?
Yeah.
We probably haven't done that in at least 4 seasons or so, like, a true, maybe since, CJ Stroud first year starting, we truly had to play with a young guy at quarterback. I guess, what's your thoughts on that? Do you think that's a benefit that you get a young quarterback with a young offensive coordinator for them to kind of go out there and figure out offense together? Or
that's the risk, right? A lot of firsts, right?
Yeah.
First time you got OC who's going to be calling the plays. It hasn't been the play caller before. First time, a guy like Keenan Bailey is going to be co-offensive coordinator within that group. First time you're going to have a quarterback who hasn't started at your university. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of firsts on the offensive side of the ball. And I will say that's where the risk lies. I mean, there's some risk there because, you haven't experienced it. Like, you haven't molded a QB or you haven't ushered in a new quarterback before as the offensive coordinator. That's just the reality of the situation. While also handling and taking control of that offense and being a guy who's game planning and making the play calls, et cetera. So that there's some challenges there. But also, when you look at it, this is the time. I mean, they just coming off a national championship. They got some equity here. When else do you bring in Brian Hartline and name him the official play caller moving forward? There's no better time than this. And I think one of the promotions I don't think we mentioned yet was Billy Fessler, who has been promoted to the quarterback coach, who before I think he was just an offensive
like an analyst or something.
Offensive analyst who came over with Chip Kelly from UCLA, and I think his role is huge. And he is the QB coach. He's the one that's gonna continue to help develop those young guys, and it's a carryover from last year and him working with those quarterbacks. So another first, right?
Yeah.
So
right.
I mean that's the risk, but also, at some point you gotta let talented people show their talent, right? It's always in any job. Sometimes the people outside the organization are valued more than those within, because you know what you have, but the grass always looks greener with somebody else, and then you bring that person in who has all the experience and all the accolades and everything, and you realize they may be good, but they don't fit what we're doing here. We done already created something here, and they don't mesh with what we're doing here. I think we saw some of that a little bit defensively with Jim Knowles, where he's a talented coach, but there was a little bit of a misfit, a little bit with, the assistants and what we have seen as successful here. So there's positive and negatives on both sides. I hope and expect. I know Hartline is going to bring to the table, but the big thing is that development of those young quarterbacks. That's going to be huge for the success overall of the offense.
Yeah, and it's always a situation where, if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? So when we brought Jim Knowles in, I think we could agree our defense was pretty broken, right? So we did retain some coaches, right? So we kind of a little bit of clash on exactly how the approach was going to be, but it was broken. We needed, a uphaul to kind of get things corrected. Under Coach Day, maybe you could pinpoint a couple of games, but essentially we have always been good on offense under Coach Day. We always, even when we had young quarterbacks with like Justin Fields and CJ Stroud when they was young, we always figured out a way to come up with points and things of that nature. And obviously once the quarterback gets seasoned, we really, are able to kind of stretch things out. Like even on the Common Core, like even with, the mistakes or play he had up and down, offensive, we was able to come up with a way to generate some touchdowns and things of that nature, even if we did maybe leave a little bit out there on the field in some of the plays. Yeah, so like you said, I think it's time for Hartline to shine, step into that role. I imagine with the young quarterback, they still figure out a way to be a good offense with Coach Day, leading that bunch and on the offensive side of things. I guess the only thing I want to bring up, because like I say, this is a podcast. Sometimes we just want to, what happens if, I don't know, we get 4 or 5 games in and the young quarterback is not clicking and we're not understanding, we're not generating offense. Do you think it's a chance that Coach Day like, hey, give me my offense back? Let me try to fix it. I don't think it would happen. To be honest, I really don't think it happened. But I don't know. I think it's always fun to talk about some what-if situation.
Yeah, so the reality is if things aren't working, yes, there's a chance that Coach Day steps in and takes more control of the offense. There's a chance that he steps in and starts calling some of the play. And, that's just the reality, right? Because he's going to trust himself. You think about, for him to give a play calling, and he brought in his football dad. We call his football dad, right? So that means it took a lot for him to actually let go. It took a lot to let go. And you imagine that he wants to continue to be able to be the CEO of the team and let go with some involvement there. But yeah, if things go left, he will step back in. And that's what I would expect. And honestly, you have to, because his job is on the line. He just got a new deal, $12 million. Shout out to Coach Day, $12 million.
Coach Day, yeah.
But yeah. I guarantee you, if things go bad, our fans.
This is still Ohio State, right?
Yeah, they point to different assistant coaches, but at the end of the day, it comes down to Ryan Day. So he'd have to step in. But you would, I Bleav that they've elevated to a point, and I think the Chip Kelly hire was so important for everybody's growth. Everyone, because Chip Kelly as an offensive coordinator, that's not a regular hire.
Yeah,
that's a legit bringing in executive consultant to come in and help everybody elevate to what they need to be. Help Ryan Day really become the head coach that he's going to be, that he was still kind of figuring out. Help Brian Hartline really become the offensive coordinator who can structure offensive passing game as well as the run game and do it, how does it need to be done? Help Keenan Bailey be a co-offensive coordinator, et cetera. So I think what Chip Kelly was able to do in supporting the run to the national championship, but also kind of leaving a little bit of his experience and approach and everything. I think that's going to be what's key for this transition this year. But this is kind of feeling a lot like that team up north last year after the national championship. And a bunch of them just promoting a bunch of guys.
No, dude, no. It doesn't feel anything like that. There's no cheating scandal of us watching play. There's no coaches, running from the NCAA to the NFL. We had none of those situations going on. We still got better players. There's no way we go out and lose. 4 or 5 games. We're not doing that. We might, we might not win them all, but I still count for our Buckeyes to be in the playoff. But no, Tim, it does not feel like that team up north. It's just a little bit different because you could. What I would say is after you win a national championship, you don't feel that sense of urgency to build the next roster. You're more in tune with letting guys play that you've been developing.
Yeah.
Not so hell bent on grabbing whoever player out the portal you think is going to help you out, but maybe take a little bit at the guys you have on the roster that you brought in. That was a 4 or 5 star recruit that you've been developing, and it's time for them to kind of step into that role so they could become, the best Buckeye they could be.
That's a good point. Because what happens is everybody elevated, right? So it's last year you had a ton of seniors. I mean, you brought in a quarterback from Kansas State that was a senior. You brought in an offensive lineman from Alabama that was a senior. You had Emeka Ibuka stay, right? You had a ton of leadership and a ton of guys who played a lot of football already on the staff. Then you bring in a coach who's coached head coach of NFL, offensive coordinator, all that stuff. And Hartline was basically the receiver coach. He was basically the receiver coach. Keenan Bailey was the tight end coach. Fessler was an analyst who was working with these QBs. Now, as these QBs who are now competing for the starting job emerge, the guy that they was working with on developing and improving is now their quarterback coach, right? Now that, the offense, a lot of these different receivers that were young, getting developed by Hartline, are now competing for spots and going to be playing more. Hartline's the offensive coordinator, right? So, a lot of the position coaches that were helping developing these young guys, they're now the coaches that are leading the young guys out on the field. So everybody kind of rises up. So I think overall, man, it's going to be good. Like these kids are familiar with these guys. They're going to be excited to play for them. And at the end of the day, it's Ohio State, right? You reload. Coaching, players, it doesn't matter. You reload. So I got a lot of faith in them.
No rebuild. We reload.
We don't rebuild. We reload for sure. Right. And defensively, I mean, there's still an opening defensively.
You're still opening, right? I mean, I was starting to hear some rumors about certain guys coming in to interview for the position. They're taking their time. And I mean, I always say, there's no real rush, rightfully so. You should get a guy that fits. You should look at your interior, look at your candidates. If you want to go exterior, some of those NFL guys floating around. So in this college football, the guy who's just doing a good job in the nation, right? Whether he's employed or not, you still look at him and see if you want to make the offer to bring him over. So we'll see. And obviously, they're making decisions soon enough.
Different than offense, Ryan Day, who is an offensive coach, there is no Ryan Day that while he might be the CEO of the team, he'll have some influence. There's no head coach that also can take over defensively, right? So I do prefer on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, whatever direction they go, I trust Coach Day to make the right decision. But I do prefer defensively to hire a head coach of the defense. Basically how they had last year. That knows a lot of football. I don't want a guy who has, this is how we run things, and this is what I'm bringing to Ohio State. No, Ohio State defensively had found some success. We talked to Denzel Burke. We talked about, kind of how they evolved defensively. I want a guy who can do anything, who's seen it all. And one of the names that's floating around most recently, there's always a new name floating around, right?
Hey, that's right.
Matt Patricia. Excuse me. Matt Patricia.
New England Patriots, right?
New England Patriots.
Former Detroit Lions head coach.
Former Detroit Lions head coach. Didn't have a lot of success as a head coach.
No.
But did have pretty good success as a defensive coordinator.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
And one thing about the Matt Patricia, Brian Flores, a lot of those coaches from the Patriots, the Patriots were very flexible defensively. They could do whatever. They could do anything. And I noticed I signed with the Patriots in the offseason for a very short period of time. And, kind of went through some of the defensive meetings and stuff. But when you watch them, and this was a year after they won the championship, when you watch them on that championship run, what they did defensively was pretty much what was most important to win that game. What do we need to do to win that game, right? They're famous for, who was the top two receivers on the other team. We're gonna take the top guy out, and then we're gonna lock down that second guy with our best player, and then we take out their two top playmakers, and then let's see what they can do after that. Like, they're famous for stuff like that. But what Matt Patricia's defense typically would do is they had the ability to create a game plan specific for that team that they were playing, and they could run any defense. Right? They were, and those players play with intelligence. They understood situational football. They understood what they do. The Patriots never had the best defensive players, at least in those last few years when their most recent championship.
Yeah.
But they play good, smart football. And that's the type of coach. I'm not saying Matt Patricia has to be the guy, but a guy who's been around the game, who understands offense, who understands defense, and can come and say, okay, I watched y'all play what y'all did last year. I watched what you did well. I watched what you struggled with. We're going to do more of what you do well. We're going to do less of what you didn't do well. And we're going to build a system around the guys that we currently have with the coaches and what they've been successful at. And I'm going to make sure I facilitate collaboration in a way that puts everybody in the best position possible. So that's what I'm hoping for from a defensive coordinator, kind of a head coach of the defense that can continue to move in the direction that we saw post-Oregon game last season.
Yeah. And then shout out Kirk Barton and the boys at Buckeye Scoop, man.
Buckeye Scoop. Hey, Buckeye Scoop batting 100 right now, man. I don't see the misses. People keep telling me they got misses. I don't see the misses.
They called the Hartline OC 2 days before everybody else. So yeah, man, shout out to Kirk Bryant and the boys at Buckeye Scoop, getting the good news out to the people, man. But man, that's our show for today. Talking about the coaches, us hiring, us moving forward here, our national championship Buckeyes moving forward here, and what's the plan for the 25 season. I think, like I say, once again, Coach Day is on, man. It's tough to argue with him. It's a lot of these decisions he's been making lately. So, you stay on that run, Coach Day. Essentially, eventually here, we'll hire someone on the defensive side of the ball, and we'll have our opinions on that as well. But we'll wrap things up today. As always, follow us on all platforms. If you're taking any bets, if you want some money in the Super Bowl, hopefully you did that with Bet Online. And if not, it's kind of, in our world, once football is over, no more games. You got to lock in for the NBA season. So check out Bet Online for bets there as well for us NBA. Follow us on all platforms, YouTube, Spotify, Apple. Follow us, and we'll continue to bring you the news and our thoughts on it here at Bleav in Buckeye. We end our show as always with a nice OH.
Yo.
Go Bucks. Catch you guys, son.
Go Bucks.